So tonight, I am very pleased to introduce tonight's welcome reception keynote speaker. Jim Copacino is a friend of one of the faculty members of our program, but he's an amazing person, and we're really fortunate to have him. Jim, after years of working on creative campaigns with other agencies, Jim felt the entrepreneurial call and co-founded Copacino and Fujikato in 1998. Jim's agency creates high-impact campaigns for regional and national clients, including the Seattle Mariners. Presently, he serves as its chief creative officer. Jim's work has been recognized in every major creative competition, including the Cannes Advertising Festival. His illustrious career has led to several Lifetime Achievement Awards from prestigious organizations, including the AMA, AAF, and Marketing Magazine. We are delighted to have him as part of Integrate 2018. Please join me in welcoming Jim.
Can you hear me? There we go. Thank you for that kind introduction. It was exactly the way I wrote it, so I appreciate that. And also, congratulations to you all on the IMC program. You know, I didn't know much about it way out in Seattle before I was invited to speak here, and I did a little research, and it's remarkable. I think it's the way it combines the academic aspect, the practical aspect, and access is really special. So I'm going to go back and spread the word if it's okay with you. So, all right, great. So, and I enjoy attending these conferences when you get to talk to people around the country, or when we're all, you know, in one way or another doing the same thing. It's terrific. And I'm always struck with one thought, which is how to work the remote control. No. Is this it? Doesn't seem to be advancing unless no, this is the bottom of it. IT help, please. Okay. Let me do it. Sorry. We'll have a brief musical interlude while we. Well, that concludes our presentation. Are there any? Are there any questions? Is it frozen? Could be. We're doing the reboot. By the way, how are you going to get those statues back through? Are there boxes for those? Oh, that's good. That's a hard thing to carry home, isn't it? Okay, thank you very much. So, as I was saying, when you attend these conferences and you meet people and find out about their companies and their firms and their businesses and their classes and what they're doing, I'm always struck with one thought, which is, are we lucky or what? Because, you know, we work in a business that has its challenges and not every day is perfect, but when you consider some of the other jobs and careers we might have chosen, this is a pretty good gig. I mean, some of us might have gone into elephant waste disposal, right? Which is one of those jobs where no matter how you work, you're always behind. Or we could be a door-to-door brick salesman, which is really bad, especially in the summer. Alligator dentistry. It's not only uncomfortable, it's very dangerous. You know, we could have been product testers for a deodorant company, you know? I'm not going to say that would be the pits. Or maybe, you know, in another life, a target holder in the North Korean army. But not us. Not us. We get to invent, to experiment, to grow, to take risks, to break rules, to make mistakes, and have fun. And I'm not just talking to the writers and art directors and designers and content creators, because as my old boss, Jay Chiat, said, who says creative has to be a department? I think that's what's fun about the environments we work in. People turn to us for new solutions, new ideas, new way to solve problems, and it's endlessly fascinating. One of my heroes in the advertising business is a guy named Helmut Krohn. I don't know if there are any advertising historians here who remember Helmut Krohn. I know, Steve, you do. He was the genius behind the old classic Volkswagen ads and Avis ads of a generation ago. But he said at one point, this was a quote later in his career, he said, "I've had the same job for 35 years. I start every day with a blank piece of paper and try to fill it with something interesting." And I always thought that was the most elegant and inspiring and simple way to describe what we do, except now I guess we use a blank computer screen, but it's the same idea. So I thought I'd start out with, to take just a few minutes to give you a little background about myself, tell you a little something about myself, and not just to be self-absorbed, but there's a point to this. But I was born in Connecticut, and my first ambition, another nutmegger, I lived there the first part of my life, and my ambition was to be a cowboy. But as I looked around Connecticut, maybe you found there were no ranches, no prairies, no cattle drives. So I went to Plan B, which is I majored in English in college. And I went to school not too far from here, Ohio University, which is across the river from Parkersburg. And I got a degree in English. That was my first day of work. So in the meantime, my parents had relocated to New Jersey, and my goal was twofold. I wanted to move to New York City and live there, and I wanted a job that had anything to do with the written word. So I bought a suit, and I think I got one of my father's old briefcases, and I went to New York, and I knocked on doors and passed out resumes. And I got a job at the McGraw-Hill Book Company as a copywriter for the Gregg division. My mother was so amazed that somebody would pay me, a big company would pay me to show up and write every day, that she took this picture and, to prove to her family and friends that, I wasn't a complete disaster as a student. I used a lot of hairspray in those days, but that was then. Now, my first job at the McGraw-Hill Book Company was in something called the Gregg division. And I don't know, some of you may remember that, probably not. The Gregg division was the business education textbook division, so it was fascinating. They published titles like Gregg Shorthand 1. They still taught shorthand in school then. Introduction to Accounting, or Typing 101. It was arguably the most boring job in the world, but I loved it. I fell in love with the compression of form of marketing communications, the way you had to present information and an idea in just a handful of words and a picture. So I took courses at the School of Visual Arts in New York and put together a portfolio. And a year later, I got a job at a small sales promotion firm on Madison Avenue called Alan Walsky and Friends. Now, the cool thing was it was Madison Avenue. It was just like TV in the movies. I went to work on Madison Avenue. It was kind of an odd little company, but and they had some strange accounts. I was assigned to something called Kleinert's Dress Shields. Does anybody know what a dress shield is? Yeah, all right, thank you. Dress shields are these absorbent cotton pads that you sew into the armpits of your clothes to prevent perspiration stains. I mean, there's a product for everything, right? So I was given the assignment, junior writer, to write the consumer ad. I think it was going to run in Glamour magazine or something, for Kleinert's Dress Shields. So, and the previous ads had been about price or about, absorbency. They were kind of dull. So I thought, is there an interesting way to talk about this product? So unfortunately, I lost the ad, but I recreated it for you to make a point. And it was a woman, brilliant. It's a fashionable woman with her hand in the air and a giant perspiration stain. Anyone who doesn't know what a dress shield is, raise your hand. And, my boss liked it, the client liked it, and on the way back from the presentation, Alan Walsky, who was a kind of an odd guy, reached into his pocket and handed me a crumpled $20 bill and said, "Nice job, kid. Take your wife out to dinner tonight." And that was my first bonus in advertising, a wrinkled $20 bill. From there, after a year at Walsky, I continued to work on stuff, and I got a job at the first real advertising agency I ever worked at. Now, I should back up for a minute. The point I want to make is you learn something from every experience. What I learned from, Kleinert's was, even a mundane, dull product, maybe there can be an interesting story behind it. In fact, I had a creative director years later who said there are no dull products, only dull people working on them. So you can find the drama in every product. Then I moved on to DDB, and it was Doyle Dane Bernbach in those days, and I was still in the sales promotion department, which was the lowest rung on the ladder. But it was exciting to be at this agency that had so much to do with inventing modern advertising. You know, the aforementioned Helmut Krohn was still there. Mr. Bernbach walked around the halls still. And it was wonderful. And DDB was known as a writer's agency. So there was a lot of emphasis placed on the art of persuasion through words, and that was very helpful to me. But what really stuck with me was the culture of mentorship at DDB. I mean, you had all these legends walking around, these very accomplished people, and they all took the time to work with, you know, young people like me and at the lowest rung of the ladder to talk about our work, to help improve it. And, it was really admirable. So I took that culture of mentorship forward with me, or tried to emulate that. And then here's where I met Mr. Montgomery at Young and Rubicam. I think I worked at DDB for 3 years. And then we worked together at Y&R. And Y&R was a classic New York packaged goods agency. We worked for a lot of Procter & Gamble brands. We worked for General Foods brands. And the thing about packaged goods advertising, it was all about strategy, finding the white space in a category and positioning it. So I learned and came to really respect the notion of strategy and how to write a creative brief. And also it was, if you did packaged goods and TV, in those days it was all television. So learned the skill of writing for video and producing TV commercials and thanks to the help of a lot of very creative, directors and art directors and producers. So that was a good skill to acquire. Well, my wife and I had lived in New York for about 8 or 9 years at that point, and we were ready for a change. And we had visited Seattle, and we fell in love with the Pacific Northwest. So in those days, Chiat Day was an emerging agency. They had about 40 or 50 people in Los Angeles and a smaller 20-person agency in Seattle. They had some business in Seattle, so they opened an office there. So it was very exciting to be at an agency that grew to be such a force in advertising in the early stages of its development. And it was, small enough where Jay Chiat and Lee Clow would come up and work with us. We'd go to LA and work with them. It was a great learning experience. And what I learned there was courage and confidence. Chiat Day had a real swagger to it. And they believed in the power of a big idea, and that great creative was sort of like David's slingshot that could slay Goliaths. And that was that was a great lesson. I then moved on. I had some success at Chiat Day, and Colin Weber at the time was the largest agency in the Pacific Northwest. They had offices in about 4 cities and almost 300 people working. And they called and made an offer to me to be creative director. And I was very flattered. It was a lot of money, so I made the jump. And the truth is, I failed at Colin Weber. I was not, like a lot of younger creative people, I thought I was ready to be a creative director. I wasn't. I was more interested in my own work than other people's work. And it was a really tough situation. There were some problems at the agency, but I knew I wasn't happy, which is, you're probably not going to do your best work if you're not happy. And so I didn't think I was earning my money. I didn't get fired or anything, but I just said, this isn't right, and I don't think I'm doing the job well. So I went back to my old boss, Roger Livingston, at Chiat Day Seattle, who had subsequently purchased the agency from Jay Chiat. Chiat Day was starting to really develop. Jay needed money to move to New York because he wanted a New York office, so he sold the Seattle office to Roger, who rebranded it Livingston and Company. And there, the lessons of failure at Colin Weber were really repurposed into more success at Livingston and Company. I got a better idea of how to manage people, a better idea of what the job required, and I had help from a lot of very talented people. So then next came a lifelong dream of starting an agency in which I would be a partner. So my partner, Betty Fujikato, and I started Copacino Fujikato 20 years ago. Betty is remarkable. She was actually the CFO at Chiat Day when we worked together. But she's a Swiss Army knife of talent. She's not only a great financial person and administrator, she's a great marketer, a great strategist, and a great partner to have. So we now have, 20 years. We celebrated our 20th anniversary on January 1st, 1998. We started with a simple mission: do great work, have fun, because as I said earlier, if you're not having fun, you're probably not doing your best work, and make a difference. Make a difference first and foremost in the success of our clients' brands. Make a difference in the lives of our employees, both personally and professionally, and make a difference in the community. We do a lot of nonprofit work. We do a lot of giving back to the community, and we're grateful for where we live, and we try to reward that. We were an ad agency, small agency of the year recently, and we're up to, well, now with a few new positions, almost 50 employees. And we're lucky enough to work with a nice mix of clients, both national and local clients. So the point of all this, again, is not to just bore. I tried to go through 40 years in about 4 minutes. I hope I was on time. Isn't to talk about me, but to make a couple of points. The first is, especially to the younger people who are here, you're eager to get ahead, you're ambitious, and in the early stages of the career, you're probably not at a place exactly where you want to be. And that can be frustrating, and sometimes you can shut down. But there is something valuable to learn at every job, even the positions or the experiences that aren't that great. So if you can sort of ask yourself, what have I learned today at the end of every day? And think about how you can apply that to your future and to your career building. I think you'll see that return benefits down the road. That's the advice of an old man. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking as well, the young people, whoa, Jim's been doing this since 1972? This dude is really old. And yes, I am, so be nice. I could drop dead in any minute. But there is an advantage to age, and that is that it provides perspective. And as I approach the end of my career, I think a lot about the beginning of it. And I think about that first office I walked into in New York at McGraw-Hill in 1972. And that probably had more in common with an office from 1928 than it does from one in 2018. Now, some of you may remember this, so you won't admit. The phone I had was a big black box attached to the wall, cellular wireless technology was science fiction back then. We had these pink while you were out slips, it was no voicemail, so you'd go out and, you go to lunch or something, you come back, the poor receptionist had to take every phone call, write what the message was, and then you had to return your calls when you came back. We didn't send PDFs to out-of-town clients. We put the layouts in an envelope, we put stamps on the envelope, we sent it out, and 2 days later we'd had a phone conversation, not exactly real-time marketing. And my computer was the latest model of the IBM Selectric typewriter. And interestingly, back then, the 3 networks accounted for 93% of the viewing audience. I mean, that's if you were watching TV or watching ABC, CBS, or NBC, most likely. And today, think about there's over 1 billion websites and all the platforms and streaming services and opportunities there are. It's not, a big newsflash to say that, I've seen a tremendous transition in our business over the last 40 years, but no more so than in the last 10 years. The last 10 years have been a seismic change. I mean, the tectonic plates have really shifted in terms of big data and analytics and marketing automation and digital media. And it's transformed the way we work every single day. And we're on the cusp of more sweeping changes, with Moore's Law and the progression. The future's coming at us faster than ever, and innovation will never rest. So as an example, think about, not that long ago, 20 years ago, something like that, how we would approach the luxury car buyer, right? Whoops. Why, we lost a slide here. Anyway, there was an old Cadillac ad in here, and the point was that if you were selling a luxury car, what you would do is, first of all, you'd buy television because, right, 93% of the audience was watching television. You'd probably buy a few select magazines, New Yorker, Harper's, get the higher-end audience. Maybe a little bit of spot radio, a little bit of newspaper, and you could leave the office for your 5 p.m. martini confident that you had reached your target audience. The only problem is that you also reach millions of people you didn't want to reach, but there was no other option. Media was a blunt instrument, and to reach a few people, you had to reach a lot of people. Now, consider today and what we know about the luxury car buyer today. Through digital technology, big data analytics, the creation of databases that identify consumers right down to the census block level, we have a wealth of information. We know where she lives. We know how much she earns. We know how she travels to work, when she logs on to her mobile devices, what Pandora stations she listens to, where she vacations, what her favorite fashion labels are, who she most likely voted for in the last presidential election, and the last time we bought a car. And we can deliver a virtual one-to-one message to her in a way that seamlessly integrates with her media habits, whether through programmatic TV, social media, online display, or even singling her out among thousands of cars speeding down the freeway. You may have remembered this partnership between Lamar Outdoor and Chevy a few years ago. They had a big digital board in a number of cities over a freeway. The digital board had a sensor that was able to recognize the grille of the car and immediately identify what kind of car it was. That would trigger an ad, serve an ad on the digital board that essentially said, hey, you in the Nissan Altima, did you know that a Chevy Malibu has more available safety features than the car you're driving? Which is remarkable. And I think we're going to see more and more of that ability through technology to be able to single out, to send these virtually one-to-one messages to us, and just wait until self-driving cars become a reality. These are going to be rolling information pods with entertainment, news, information, and advertising aimed directly at the people in that car, probably on a first-name basis. A little creepy, right? But, you know, I think we're all making peace with the fact that privacy is currency that we exchange for the convenience of being connected to the digital world. So we're at a real inflection point through technology in terms of our business. It changes every day, and there's no shortage of sources to corroborate that. But you know, during times of great transformation, it tends to foster extreme opinions, and I'm sure you've seen these. Some people say print is dead, that print is no longer a relevant medium. Some people say that 6 seconds is the optimal length for pre-roll video. The audience doesn't have the patience to watch a video for more than 6 seconds. Others say that if you can't interact with an ad, don't bother producing it. The only ad worthwhile is one that can immediately prompt a direct response. You've heard a lot of these things. And even more so, some folks are saying, you know, with the wealth of product information that people have at their fingertips, with third-party reviews, consumers are increasingly going to make decisions based on empirical facts versus emotional desire. And there's some truth to all of this, but I would say let's slow down and pump the brakes a little bit. You know, the fact is that, just because you can count an impression doesn't mean you've made an impression. We've got to stop confusing a hurried like on Facebook with true human engagement. And as David Ogilvy said so succinctly about 50 or 60 years ago, telling isn't selling. Information isn't persuasion. But I think there is a tremendous opportunity for us in marketing communications in the future, in the near future, to combine technology and human emotion. And nothing's more, I think, indicative of this than the rise of digitally native vertical brands. Now, these are companies that sell directly to the consumer online with little or no brick and mortar presence. And they're disrupting the entire supply chain. And I'm sure you've done business with some of these companies, whether it's eyewear from Warby Parker, shoes from Zappos, mattresses from Casper, razor blades from Harry's, or contact lenses from Hubble. I mean, these companies precisely target consumers through first-party data and third-party data. And that gives them a tremendous advantage. They know who their consumer is. They can target it, unlike the luxury car buyer ad from 20 years ago. And they can walk into our lives at any time of the day or night. We've given them digital access via text, email, online display, social media, or opt-in alerts. So they can offer us a screaming deal on a high-quality product, far below retail prices because they don't have the overhead, complete with free delivery right to your doorstep, okay? And I'm sure we've all had these experiences. So you would think that these digitally native vertical brands have little or no use for the expense and razzle-dazzle of brand advertising, or what we might consider, emotional connection with consumers. But actually, the opposite seems to be true. Because these brands don't really have any physical presence, they have to establish trust and credibility with the consumer. They have to constantly bring more consumers into the purchase funnel. So they're relying heavily on brand advertising and content, especially video, not traditional 30-second TV commercials, but video messages on screens large and small using sight, sound, motion, and emotion to tell their story and to connect with consumers. And here's how these brands are actually using the language of brand advertising too. Is anybody ever aware of Brandless? Yeah, Brandless is an amazing company. They offer unbranded, high-quality health, beauty, and nutrition products, at a fraction of the cost. And Tina Sharkey, the co-founder, talks about, building a community, putting people first, being authentic and real with people, and so forth. Away is another booming online retailer that sells high-end travel products and services. And Steph Corey, their co-founder, says storytelling is central to marketing. We think about what stories we can feed to the press and things that people will want to share and talk about. So they are seeking this emotional connection with people as well. They're not IP addresses selling to bots. And one of the things I really admire is the Dollar Shave Club, also known as the Gillette Killer. They along with Harry's, in a few years, have taken a 30% share from Gillette razor blades because people like myself got tired of walking into Walgreens and paying $26 for 4 Gillette razor blades. So here was the Dollar Shave Club's story. Now, like the other digitally native vertical brands I talked about, this is a high-tech company. This is a company that's deep into data and analytics and logistics and so forth. But they also have a heart, don't they? They also understand their consumer. And they use the emotions of humor to start with, indignation, it's like, you're getting ripped off, and a swagger, that makes you believe in this company. If he's that confident in his company, he must be onto something. So essentially, I'm here to tell you something that you already know. But like the 10 Commandments and speed limit signs and our bathroom scales, once in a while we need a reminder to do the right thing. And the right thing is this. As we rely more on data and precision targeting and analytics, there's a tendency to overlook that we ultimately need to reach the hearts and minds of living people, not some abstract user. These are real people. Let's cue the real people. Real people with complicated lives who are living a daily drama of challenges and triumphs and human relationships. In our company, we embrace data and analytics. In fact, I think we spend probably more than most companies our size on a suite of tools that enable us to spot trends, to identify and segment markets, to measure the efficiency of a message, and to improve ROI. But we also talk a lot about something, I like the phrase, nobody else in my company likes it, but I can use it here. Strategic empathy. That is, using technical tools to build an emotional connection between a brand's promise and a consumer's daily life. Our job is not just to compile data, but to use it as a bridge to understand human behavior. Our job is to turn data into a map of the human heart. And as communicators, our job is to find the poetry that's lurking in those spreadsheets of data, and it's there. We have to think like actors in a film or a play, imagining and inhabiting the lives of the people we're trying to engage, the consumer, and find the humanity within. I like to think of it as robots and, oh, there's our people again. Oh, this is an old version of the thing, that's fine. Robots and goosebumps. In other words, yes, we must fully embrace data and technology and machine learning, and it makes us faster and smarter and better, but only to serve as a starting point of forging a human connection, not as an end in itself. So whether we're brand managers, account executives, writers, art directors, web developers, content creators, media buyers, strategic planners, we need to understand that empathy and understanding are the most powerful tools we have. And in our polarized and divided society today, that's probably not only good marketing, finding shared humanity is not only good marketing, it's probably good citizenship. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And what I'd like to do, if we have enough time, is show some work that I've done over the years, mostly from our company, that tries to put this into practice. So are we up for that? Is it okay? Okay. I apologize for how dated this example is, but it really taught me about the power of empathy as a marketing tool. Alaska Airlines, and I know some of you have been to Seattle and Alaska fishing have experienced Alaska Airlines. Alaska Airlines was a small airline in the 90s that flew routes from Seattle northward to cities in Alaska. These were not profitable routes for big airlines, but Alaska kind of owned those routes. Then airline deregulation came along, and all bets were off. It used to be that the government determined where an airline could fly and how much it could charge. So the only differentiator was really where it was going and how much you liked the airline. Alaska Airlines jumped into the deregulation battle and decided, here's our opportunity to expand southward and expand eastward. Alaska was a young airline. It was spunky. It wasn't heavily unionized. They had lower costs. So what they did was to position themselves as a higher service airline. For the same price, you'll get more in Alaska. And they could do that, again, because of their cost structure and their the fact that they were smaller and less burdened than the legacy carriers. So we did a series of commercials that basically said, important, at the same time, the big airlines were cutting back on service. Meals became less elaborate. Service got a little crankier because there was more downward pressure on people to deliver profit, and they cut back on onboard service personnel and on the bigger airlines, and people were overworked. They were squeezing more seats into planes. So we said, okay, let's tell people the story about how Alaska Airlines offers you a better service advantage. But the real breakthrough was, and this came out of focus groups and research, people were telling horror stories about what was happening on airlines. And this was like 30 years ago. Now it's forget about it. But they were coming back and saying, I used to love this airline, and now the food's bad, it's crowded, the people are cranky. So we did what we call the empathy campaign, a series of commercials that basically said to the consumer, we feel your pain while you fly, and we're going to try to do what we can within our ability to make it better.
For centuries, mankind dreamed of flying. Now, mankind wonders why. After all, just getting to your plane can be a trip in itself. And when you finally get there, you may wish you hadn't, with seats that cramp your style. And food
Munchie time!
that's hard to swallow.
This is it. Evidently, this is it.
Fortunately, there's Alaska Airlines, with close-in gates, roomy seating, and our special Gold Coast service. So next trip, fly Alaska Airlines, and fly with a happy face.
Sky High Airlines, Sky High Airlines, Sky High Airlines, Sky High Airlines.
say they want your business. But when you finally buy a ticket, not all airlines act like it. At Alaska Airlines, we do more than promise good service. We go out of our way to deliver it. These days, a lot of airlines are cutting corners on their meals.
This little beauty we like to call banquet on a bun, right, Bob?
Banquet on a bun.
I like it.
Sit down, Bob. Now, with this, you can serve a whole plain loaf for just pennies.
I like it.
Holastic parsley. You can use it over and over again.
I like it.
Pygmy chickens. You can get 105 with an ordinary shoebox.
I like it.
At Alaska Airlines, we spend a little more on our meals, and you can taste the difference. You knock yourself out just getting to your flight. That's why at Alaska Airlines, we figured the least we can do is treat you well once you finally get here.
I apologize for how dated those are. They look old, but but the lesson endures, which is that those commercials or that campaign wasn't really about food and service and more room in the planes. It was about feeling the customer's pain and understanding what they go through. And Alaska expanded rapidly, and in every new market they went into, those commercials, and we did about 50 or 60 over the course of 7 or 8 years, were often cited as you know, the reason why people wanted to try the airline. And fortunately, they delivered on it. Now they're the 5th largest airline in the country. But again, the lesson was, you know, understand your customer and understand what they're going through. We do work for Holland America Line. Do we have some cruisers here? Do people like to go on cruises? Yeah. Cruise market's very crowded, and it's sort of a look-alike, sound-alike category. McKinsey & Company came in and worked with Holland America, and they identified their prime customer of opportunity, which is something they called, or we call, the globetrotting learner. Now, these are people who are well-educated, affluent, in their 50s or 60s, early 70s. And what distinguishes them is that they are really curious and interested in the world around them. They just don't want to go on a cruise and sit in a you know, deck chair or just eat at the buffet. They want to get out and learn about new people, places, and cultures. And a couple of trends, you know, boomers were seeking more meaning in their life. You know, you get to a certain point where you've established a certain amount of material comfort. Now what's next? And they wanted to go out there and learn more about the world. And increasingly, there's a longing for connection in our society. So we did a campaign that was built around this higher purpose of travel. The first one is kind of a 60-second anthem built around the fact that in Holland America Line's heritage and DNA, they started their company by helping people live a better life.
We were born to voyage. In 1873, the Netherlands-American Steamship Company set sail for the Americas, its passengers in search of a better life. These voyages changed the world. Now known as Holland America Line, we're still changing the world, taking our guests to over 100 countries, exploring new lands, experiencing new customs, and making new friends. Celebrating our differences while discovering our shared humanity, as we become ambassadors of their cultures and they become ambassadors of ours. Because travel is more than an itinerary. It has the power to transform us and our world, journey by journey. This is why we sail.
And we thought this idea of higher purpose of travel would work well in the context of the Winter Olympics. So this was a commercial we did for the games in South Korea.
Some say that oceans separate us, but at Holland America Line, we believe they connect us. Traveling the world opens our minds and hearts to new cultures. We see ourselves in one another and celebrate the gift of our shared humanity. One smile, one landmark, one meal, one marvel, and one unforgettable moment at a time. This is why we sail.
So, you know, the cruise business has been helped tremendously by the economy, but we're cheered by the fact that Holland America Line has had its best year in the last 3 years, and they seem to be attracting more and more of that type of customer that I described. So that's gratifying. We do work for the Seattle Aquarium. It's a nonprofit. Their mission is to protect and preserve, help educate people to protect and preserve our marine environment. But really, our research showed that the prime audience for the Seattle Aquarium are parents with kids 5 through 12. I don't know what happens at puberty, but they stop being that interested in fish, apparently. And, you know, we often think that, you know, all these emotional messages have to be delivered through video. But this is primarily, I mean, we've done a whole integrated campaign, but the primary medium, you know, their prime time is during the summer. A lot of out-of-home to talk to parents and kids simultaneously. We tried to do like The Simpsons. You know, the kids can enjoy The Simpsons on one level, the parents on another level, to kind of stir the curiosity and joy of learning in both kids and adults. So they're fascinating creatures in the aquarium, so we tried to uncover these interesting stories. Like sea otters, for example, hold hands in our sleep, so we never drift apart. Kind of a nice little story. The tufted puffin's an amazing fish, and it can hold 12 fish in its beak. The Pacific octopus has 8 arms. I guess we all know that, but it also has 3 hearts. So who wants a hug? You know, we're talking 11-year-old boys, so we have to have a few gross-out ones. So the jellyfish feed on plankton, then poop through their mouths. And I was glad they let us do that. Here's another sea otter thing. To keep their fur vibrant and healthy, they wrap themselves in kelp. So that's their beauty secret. And these are called the Pacific spiny lumpsucker, and they're about that big, and they're not. It wouldn't be aerodynamic; it'd be aquadynamic at all. You know, there's just little round balls. So what they do is they just hide under rocks and eat plankton all day. So they're suck at swimming and great at sucking. So. And again, you know, emotions come in all different flavors, and this is just kind of a charming way to get a point of the spear, and get parents and their kids into the aquarium, and then ultimately tell the story about how the oceans are in peril and how future generations need to care for our marine environment. 2 more, quickly. The Wing Museum is a museum in Seattle that is focused on the Asian Pacific experience, the Asian Pacific American experience. And they had a big opportunity coming up because they were doing an exhibit on Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was born in Seattle, went on to become a famous martial artist, and they worked with the Lee family to do a big retrospective of his life, which was very interesting. We had very little money to spend on media, so we had to kind of skin the cat in a different way. So we came up with a way to generate excitement about Bruce Lee through a very interesting medium. It was an article of clothing. So here's a little video that tells the story.
The Wing Luke Museum in Seattle needed help branding and launching its new Bruce Lee exhibit, the only such exhibit in the U.S. We'd have the full participation of the Lee family, a beautifully designed and curated exhibit, and the draw of an international icon. What we wouldn't have was a large media budget. The museum would feature the movie star and martial arts legend people know, but would also show the other sides of Bruce Lee, a father, husband, and poet who shattered stereotypes. Working with the museum, we helped name the exhibit, Do You Know Bruce? And developed the brand identity, look, and feel, along with a campaign that would show Bruce Lee as the multi-dimensional, groundbreaking man he was. We knew we only had one chance to make a big splash for the grand opening and needed to amplify the message far beyond the media dollars. So we harnessed the power of a single item that Bruce Lee made famous, the yellow jumpsuit, which would become the focus of our grand opening campaign. It started by getting the city of Seattle to officially proclaim October 3rd Bruce Lee Day. Then we blanketed the city and social media with yellow jumpsuits, inviting politicians, actors, celebrity chefs, reporters, and representatives from Seattle's biggest attractions to show their support by sharing photos and videos of their best Bruce Lee impressions. It generated a stream of social shares, and we quickly caught the eye of local and national media.
It's not Halloween just yet, but that didn't stop one U.S. congressman from dressing up like martial arts icon, the late Bruce Lee. That's 77-year-old Congressman Jim McDermott from the state of Washington that you see there. He recorded this video yesterday to promote a new museum exhibit in Seattle on Bruce Lee, which opens this weekend.
So you need the jumpsuit, though. That was perfect, except for the jumpsuit.
I would wear a jumpsuit.
It was a campaign that defied the odds and exceeded all expectations, much like the man himself.
So that was fun and effective. Congressman McDermott didn't quite understand. He had the jumpsuit on backwards. It's supposed to zip up the back, but we forgave him because I don't know. Maybe his assistant wasn't there to zip him up. I don't know. And then finally, one last video, and I'll be done. I'm sure all of you are involved in some level with Goodwill, either taking your old stuff to Goodwill or maybe shopping at the thrift shop. You may not all know, maybe you do, that Goodwill is sort of like a tip of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is the retail experience, right? You take your stuff there, you can buy stuff. But below the iceberg, Goodwill is really about job training, giving people a second chance, getting people back on their feet. And that's not fully understood or appreciated as much. So we did a series of profiles of people who have benefited from the Goodwill experience, and here's one of them.
My name is Square Kador Donaldson. I'm originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I had a tragic death in my family. I lost one of my daughters, and it just took a lot out of me. I quit working. I started drinking real heavy, and that led to drugs. I ended up going to prison. Then I got out, and death knocked at my door again. My daughter's kidneys failed on her. She was 32 years old. I started drinking heavy. I just went so far down till I just couldn't dig my way back up. I ended up downtown in Pioneer Square, homeless for 2 years. I was on a 3rd grade reading level. Didn't have no education whatsoever. I promised myself that I was gonna do something with my life. I knew about Goodwill. I went there on a Rainier and Dearborn. I told him my situation. I said I went to a college and they told me that I didn't belong there. He said that shouldn't have happened to anyone, and it won't happen here, I can promise you. June 23rd, 2016, I was one of the ones that got to March and got my high school diploma. But I wouldn't have never got that if the light hadn't came on and told me to go where I would be welcome, I would be respected, and I would be treated like a human being. When I went to Goodwill and took these classes, it gave me my life back. Now I want to take up a business class. I want my business to be successful. But my goal, really, like I said, I want to pass my story on. We have 14 positions in my church that the members could participate in, and I participate in the homeless program. We prepare hot meals for the homeless downtown. I give back like that, and these same people that I feed and pray for, I done slept beside them. Now when I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror, I see a success. I see a human being that got their dignity and their pride back, and a high school diploma. Yes.
Great stories at Goodwill. So, you know, and I showed mostly video because that's easier to do in an environment like this. But most of these campaigns are integrated. And, you know, it's amazing all the tools we have at our disposal now to help surround and delight people with our message. But I guess my message is pretty obvious that none of it matters unless there's really a heart at the center of it and humanity and this notion of fully understanding the lives of the people you're talking to. So thank you for your attention and your patience. I hope some of this is somewhat helpful and applicable to what you're doing, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Jim?
Yeah, well, you know, we don't have a big budget on Holland America. And those, so some of the images of oh, yeah, yeah. Well, you know, we work with the director. Where's the beef? Yes, yeah. Where's the beef? And some of the Federal Express. So we're perfect. I mean, they're interesting in real life. Oh, yeah, no, we yeah, make sure. Okay. And the client embraced it. Well, they thought it was great. They're very important, and they were great. So it was a win-win.
There were a lot of that, like T-shirts, cap.
Yeah, good point, right? Got our things, posters, food bags, and we do a lot of. Well,
All right, one more.
What's the most challenging project or campaign that you've worked on, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Well, I'm not going to name the call. And this is kind of typical. It's a company that is very silent. And the marketing leadership is, frankly, not that strong. Good people, everybody well-intended. But getting work approved is extraordinarily difficult because everybody you talk to has a different perspective about what the brand should be. And no one is really taking charge of the brand. So we do find we get things done. Some of the work is pretty good, but it's harder than it should be. So is that the most challenging campaign ever? I don't know. But I think that's the most challenging situation we can be in. This is understands, throughout the C-suite and all the way down what the brand stands for and what everybody's job is. Whether you're a line person or a marketing person or a financial person, you should all be, you should all rally around a mission in the company. And this company hasn't quite found that. We're trying to help them, but we don't know who's in charge. We can't get it solved. So, but that sort of situation, So you just keep pushing forward and hope that you make some progress.
I was just kidding. There's still one more.
Hi, thanks. And I'm a big fan of Alaskan Airlines, by the way. Great service and prices. My name's Carolyn Guglielmo, and I'm a workplace safety and public health advocate for 22 years. And a lot of things we do in my profession is marketing, communications, changing behaviors. Whether it's writing brochures or identifying hazards for employees, whether it's putting a conference like this together, which is very important. So I have a question. It's not a political question, but it involves politics. And I'm looking at your roundabout way of marketing. And what I have found over the last 22 years in working in my profession, and I've worked with state government, federal government, large associations inside the Beltway, stuff like that, seems that our political system is all based off of marketing and communications. And the majority of Americans, if they don't do the type of work that I do, or people who are connected to agencies, associations, labor organizations, Americans get their news and a lot of their information based off of 90-second sound bites. That's it, whether it's on workplace safety, addiction, whatever. And so the American people have a very difficult and confusing time sorting through what is real and what is not real. And the majority, I could probably ask people around this room, when was the last time you read a bill that was introduced in your legislature or in your local? So my question is this, and maybe you have some insight on this, because now more than ever, we have a lot of misinformation or inaccurate information. And how do you see, from your perspective, you've been in this business for a very long time, we have a lot of people fighting over things that they don't really know all the ins and outs of and nuances. But how could marketing or communications now that we know this, I've known this for many years, but how can we improve through marketing and communications for people to be better voters or have the proper, appropriate information they need to make better consumer decisions on whether it's an elective candidate or if it's a certain type of product? We put a lot of products out on the market that are bad for the public health. So if you have any insight or some sort of perspective that you've seen over the years, because we went from 4 TV stations to, you know, God knows how many. And then we also have a lot of consumers are taking, you know, they're reading stuff from people and they don't know where it's coming from or what experience does that journalist, reporter, communicator, marketer have. So anyways, that's probably never, that question's not crossed your path, but it's something very important, dear to my heart.
I don't think there's an easy answer to that. But we are living in a time with the proliferation of media. Unfortunately, people get to choose the news that they want to watch, that they want to hear, and so we're all kind of living in echo chambers. And you know, the current political environment is hard to avoid, regardless of what side you're on. It's just the polarization is very unfortunate. I don't have an answer. I just think you just hope that a free press, you know, and honest people doing good work will prevail over the prevaricators, over the people who are trying to trick us and fool us. Marketing communications can play a part in that, but there are good guys and bad guys in marketing communications. So I just think we have to find the center somehow, you know, somehow find the things we can agree upon rather than constantly harp on the things that divide us. But I think we're all probably a little bit concerned about the state of our society and the state of media right now for all the reasons you pointed out. And I wish I had a better answer. Can anybody solve this problem? Please? Right. I see. Right. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Probably worthy of an entire conference, but yeah.
Jim, what you said, truth will prevail. I think that is what Jim said. Truth will prevail. I think that's what we have to hang on to. I mean, if we don't have that, we have nothing.
Well, on that depressing note, let's go to the bar. Thank you for asking that.
All right, I echo Jim's sentiment. Let's please enjoy. We have some more raps and definitely some more beer. And so I hope everyone enjoys. We're going to have some entertainment, and please you know, continue to talk with each other, and we'll see you all on the other side of the Media Innovation Center.